Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Honest Conversations with Mo, the Mo Love podcast. Um, I said, good to be back. And want to get, right into, today's topic. I think throughout this season, we dealt on, you know, various topics throughout, but I just want to say this one may be my favorite. And this one being how we go about opening up ourselves to compliments and opening up to compliments overall. And as someone who I can admit myself that I struggle with opening up to compliments, I think it's just being aware of how do we go about, being thankful, and being appreciative, to the compliments that, are given out, for example, obviously, just recently, got the braids in and everything. Shout out to, the glam effect, on that one, but definitely appreciate her on that. And, obviously, receive compliments, on my hair and things like that. But I think it's not only just, for example, when it comes to, my hair or just, anything in general, it's always been, difficult for me to be appreciative and acceptance of, compliments. And when, sometimes when we receive compliments, we tend to often deflect or we tend to, often, give a compliment back instead of, just taking it all in and, saying thank you when it comes to getting a compliment. And I feel when when we realize, that it's okay to, receive not only just receive compliments, but to uh that that light that others see in ourselves and being mindful of that is is eye opening. I say it's eye opening in the sense that we we tend to move in accordance with, kind of more so who we are. And I think, as I said throughout this season, I talked about, who we want to be and, who we are overall. I think that comes also with, how we go about accepting, the the good parts about us instead of, hiding away and, hiding away and, leaning to, to the initial default of just letting it letting it feel like we're, undeserving of that. And I think when we remember that, when we receive a compliment, it's not knowing that it's, this trap that's like, oh, you feel like, oh, somebody saying you of like, oh, you mean me? But I think it's just being aware of, hey, not only your own light and you are deserving of this and how you're truly capable. And I can say, I was recently talking to a friend, and I think sometimes we forget to harness our own powers and really realize our true strengths because we feel we have to default to external validation and things of that nature, and it often hinders us in who we want to who we want to be and how we view ourselves. And I think when we when we move in accordance with accepting compliments for what they are, it's a compliment and it's okay to give one. And I think when we accept those and move and knowing, hey, this isn't something that's meant to catch you off guard, meant you to feel like you're undeserving. Um, lets you know that you're just moving in accordance with who you are. And I think that's the best part about compliments. It doesn't have to feel triggered to get one or feel the need to give one back. As I said, for myself, compliments are so hard, just in general, because I felt like not only did I feel undeserving of maybe the compliment I was giving at the time, but I felt like I didn't earn it. I think sometimes we get caught up in this mindset that we have to we have to earn love, earn, victory and things like that. And I can, say for myself in that sense, in that I feel like I didn't do enough to, deserve that compliment. That's why I always, as I said, deflected and wouldn't, or, would give a compliment back, or would, question and compliment and things of that nature, instead of just pausing and breathing and just saying thank you. And I think sometimes, the compliments we're giving don't require rebuttal, doesn't require, an additional response. I think it just requires, taking it in and knowing that, hey, that was meant for you, and it's okay to move in accordance within that light, and knowing, how great you are, in any sense, and whatever capacity, the compliment is given, whether it's, gains you're making, in the gym, whether, it's, the things you're doing, to build your community, or it's, like I said, it could be just something as, how you're looking that day, and just being appreciative of who you are in that moment, and continue to shine in your own light, and continue to be you in every moment. And I think that's the most fundamental part. And being not only open to compliments, but accepting and receiving that compliments, because I feel like segueing into the next section of how we tend to fear being benched. And I think, and I mean fear of being benched in that we feel that, we're often be, reverted or seen, as the backup, or seen as, a secondary option. And feeling replaceable. That tends to obviously lead to, that low sense of self-worth and, self-acceptance of ourselves. And I think when we get over that fear of being benched, and that fear of, oh, woe is me, mentality of feeling like, oh, things good things aren't meant to happen for us. And I think that's that fear of being benched, the fear that our spot can, be taken at any time. And obviously it's it's obviously a catch 22 in sense of, we're not gonna always, have the spotlight, or be, the one that, catches, everyone's eye. But I think it's also being aware that you aren't, you aren't less than, because, you lost this sense of this sense of status about yourself. It doesn't, diminish who you are, diminish who you're ultimately becoming. Because I think when we overcome, that sense of insecurity about, our certain plights, that maybe we feel, we are, less than, or we feel like, things we need to work on, it often, derails us from who we're, wanting to be. I think when we get over that fear of being benched, that fear of feeling like, I'm getting my spot taken, it leads to that sense of just, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say in the sense of, mm, that, that sense of not, not being seen as an option. And I think obviously it's human nature to feel, trying to, strive for, human, connection, and, relating to others, and, developing uh, a connection with others, and, feeling seen. I think is ultimately, what we want to be, um, is, seen by others. But I think it's the importance of, just seeing ourselves too, and, knowing our capabilities and our fullest strengths. And I think the fear of being benched leads us to forget our, our best traits and our best parts of ourselves, when ultimately we just gotta get over that fear, get over that mentality that, we're not enough, and know that, hey, we are. At the end of the day, you are enough. You know you know you don't have to be perfect and in the moment as is right now. You just got to continue to put in that necessary work of who you want to be and who you want to become, and it'll ultimately, lead you to the right people and to the right, opportunities for that's that's meant for you, meant for who you're supposed to be. And I think, just jumping back to, kind of that opening up to compliments is just knowing that it's, it's deeper than what we, you know, see from ourselves and see, what we're truly capable of. Because not only does, opening up to compliments, really, obviously create that further spark for you and yourself and knowing, hey, I am worthy of, receiving this compliment. I am very much deserving of this. And it also, just further builds, deepens that connection of that, we develop not only with ourselves, but with others. And that when, we're appreciative of compliments, I think it becomes a bit easier to, give out compliments. And I think compliments in a sense of those that aren't as, as shallow and superficial, but those that are, meaningful and, worthy to, give upon others because we realize, hey, this is, and we become more aware, those around us and, what their, greatest traits are. And I think when you tend to, accept the compliments for, your own greatest strengths, it's easier to, provide that to others because I think jumping into this in terms of you beginning to realize, that sense of, self-compassion and self-acceptance, you know, being compassionate with ourselves, being gracious with who we are, the manner and approach that we talk, to ourselves, and how we move, within ourselves, and you know, how we are ourselves and, going about just that self acceptance as well, that self acceptance of, hey, this is me. I appreciate and I am, appreciative of all aspects of who I am and who I'm becoming. And it's okay. I don't have to be, this perfect perfect image that I have, in my mind of who I need to be or who I need to become because, you feel like you haven't gotten there, yet. And I think when we get over that, self-compassion and self-acceptance becomes easier because obviously, we all have these vision of ourselves, in terms of who we see ourselves becoming, throughout our lives, whether it's, the different moments in our lives of who we feel we want to be or who we want to become or where we want to see ourselves going. And I think when we become gracious with ourselves within, our own journeys and accepting of ourselves of exactly where we are in that present moment, it only makes getting to what we feel is capable of that much easier. And it opens up just that much more because not only are you being, true to yourself and moving in accordance with that, it's you're also just, feeling that fire within you that's been there all along, that spark that you feel like's been hidden and now boom, it can truly flourish. And I think when we sit in when as I say, going back, when we sit in that sense of being, being benched and being, not enough or feeling, not worthy enough of who we truly are, we forget the endless possibilities that are out there for us, because, feeling benched could be, comparing yourself to, somebody else, comparing yourselves to, uh previous, not only just to somebody else, but compare yourself to a previous version of you that is no longer there, and I think when we get past even that, it only makes things, that much more easier for ourselves and who we want to become ultimately. It's also, the looking in that mirror and being like, hey, this is who I am and this is who I want to be and this is how I'm going to go about being. exactly the person I want to be because I am appreciative of me in this very moment and my being and who I am, this very moment. I think, for myself, you know, as I said, throughout this season, obviously I've opened up, a lot in terms of, I think it was uh even how I, talked about, aspects of love and things like that was definitely, something hard for me to really, open up on. But I think it was just necessary in being self-accepting or being, gracious with myself and knowing, hey, those are just, experiences that, I've had and things like that, or how I view myself, obviously in the past, and knowing exactly, what I would see for myself, not only, in love, but also just in life overall, things I continue to, work on and continue to get better, to further sharpen my tools only makes me that much better. You, friend, talking with a friend last week as far as, sometimes we forget how amazing we truly are because, we get so narrow minded and, you know, the mundanity, life and, obviously, life keeps going and, we forget, how we are, influencing, and inspiring others. I use the example for me in the sense of I remember, early on, you know, um, especially in the past, in the sense where I felt like I I didn't, I didn't feel like I belonged, and in terms of belonging in the sense of where I was, seeking that validation, from others, and I felt like I I struggled balancing, my strength of, being adaptable in the sense of where I felt like I had to find, like that oneness, that one community that felt like, oh, that was meant for me. And not realizing, my true strength and, my value and, being able to connect with others and so many, different, um, different individuals, just, in terms of, my strength and my curiosity and, how that fuels me and how that allows me to it's be the best version of myself because I get I get my ideas from different people and the different people I meet with and the different opportunities that obviously present themselves in that sense. And I felt like I got so gung ho and feel like, oh, I gotta find my community that I, ostracized maybe others or maybe not necessarily ostracized, but I guess I felt, out of place in that and I didn't feel like I really ever belonged anywhere. But I think remembering that my true strength wasn't to belong in one place, but to know that, I can connect with, so many different people. And I think that was, awareness that I had, of late in terms of, even giving myself, self-compassion and, that acceptance in myself, and just even that moment, last week. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at is that obviously we're going to have those days where we feel like there's something about us that's, not enough but once we realize what it is that makes us truly unique is the thing that, makes us that much greater and that much better as people and as a person, as we, continue to grow. And like I said, it starts with just opening up the compliments and being gracious with ourselves and giving ourselves that gratitude that we're deserving because you know life is hard and it's not gonna things gonna get aren't gonna be easier if we continue to derail ourselves by continuing to put down ourselves. That only further further delays our inevitable progress that we're ultimately seeking, but also delays us in our own sense of happiness and our own sense of fulfillment and who we want to be and who we want to become. Um, and then in that, I want to segue into. I'm gonna jump in next. Obviously, jumping into into the unrivaled playoffs that's currently going on. Obviously, I want to say the games tip off today. I want to say later today, later this evening. But anyways, unrivaled playoffs. What has been, excuse me, an incredible unrivaled season. You know, this year, setting setting numbers. Not only obviously in Philadelphia, set to play in the Barclays Center, and things like that. But it's been a phenomenal year for Unrivaled. But we got our playoff teams. We got our playoff bracket. Obviously, Phantom and the Mist secure the 1 and 2 spots, and securing that first round bye. The Laces, the 3 seed, the 4 seed being the Rose, and the return of Angel Reese, and we love to see Angel back on the court, playing for the Rose again, of course. Breeze at 5, the young upstart Breeze squad, led of course by Paige Beckers and Rikia Jackson, and then of course Vinyl, that's been you know playing phenomenal all season, led by Ray Burrell out there for the Bible. But our matchups, for today for the first round, obviously is going to be the Laces versus Vinyl on the 3-6 matchup, and then we got of course Rose and Breeze, which should be a fun matchup for our 4-5 matchup. So excited! Obviously, Rose, defending champions. We'll see if they'll be able to defend their crown as inaugural season champs. There about it. My initial, gut feeling as far as who I got winning. I think the return of Angel to the Rose has certainly helped them. As far as the Rose being, able to defend their crown as champions from last year. I think I'm gonna go. But I really think Breeze could just, show up as, the young upstart team and just ball out in the final, the underdog this season throughout Unrivaled. But I'm gonna go Rose as defending champs, and they're gonna be back-to-back champs some way, somehow. The return of Angel Reese is gonna further propel that team with, Shakira Austin, Chelsea Gray, and then just continue to ball out. I'm calling in, Rose as champs. Obviously, not Laces, the Phantom and Mist have been, incredible all season. But I think the defending champs are gonna, repeat and the title once again. I'm calling, Rose to win, win the chip overall. But I think obviously in that first round matchups, obviously I'm gonna go upset. I'm gonna say Vinyl beat the Laces, and I'm gonna go obviously Rose beating the young Breeze squad on that one. But obviously, y'all continue, tune in, on the Unrivaled Playoffs. As I said, it's been an incredible season. Obviously, let me know who y'all end up, feeling going, come out on top this Unrivaled season. I think from that, it's a perfect segue to, you know, be back with the WNBA CBA talk. And obviously, the news we got earlier this month, obviously the WNBA was able to trigger the revenue sharing clause, in the 2020 CBA, where they, opened up the books, and I want to say the players, because of earnings, they were able to get a $16 million payout that obviously is going to be dispersed across, all teams in the W. From this past 2025 season, from obviously revenue earned there. But on that note of, revenue share, I think it's been the biggest, topic of, contention within this current WNBA, CBA negotiations, across the league, with the WNBA and WNBA PA, and what exact value, they see their the exact, number they feel is an equitable number when it comes to revenue sharing there. And in that we are getting ever so close to, we saw the WNBA, release the proposed schedule for this past year. Obviously training camp set to start April 19th, if I'm not mistaken. And did get the news out, of course, that the WNBA made the WNBA PA aware that they have, up until, March 10th to, come to an agreement in terms of with the current, based on how negotiations are going, and ensuring that this, current WNBA season isn't disrupted. The news that came out on that. We've obviously seen, agents, for major players, across the uh NBA, across the just in terms of, their conversations with the WNBA PA, is, obviously getting to that boiling point of, if they decide to strike and not feeling, negotiations are going to the manner of which, they foresaw it, is going to be interesting. Revenues has been, the most, contentious part, revenue sharing element, the salary cap, obviously as well. And then the addition, of obviously, retirement, benefits, as well as, roster spots. So it's just been interesting in terms of what's been, laboring, these negotiations and, the overall, negotiation period, with the the league and WNBA PA has obviously been interesting. And as we said, and I've said, throughout the players deserve to get paid, and ensuring that the right deal is struck to ensure that that's seen, obviously, the management of max contracts, and the value added there. Uh, so obviously, we see they were able to trigger that clause from 2020, and getting that revenue share. Obviously, I would say it comes out to about, each player will get about $50,000 based off of what was triggered in that. But I think it just continue to show the W is very profitable, you know um and how the players are bringing added value in that sense. And I think the further growth of the W, I think, not derailing that progress, is gonna be interested, and obviously continue to truly pay these players in accordance to to their value and what they deserve, because of their, not only the incredible growth, but their incredible skill sets, and allowing that continue to flourish and continue to be paid what they're due for sure. So continue to monitor that, as we get close to that March 10th deadline, as the league set out on that, just to avoid disruptions. And obviously the WNBA PA recently, obviously had, players only meeting, obviously heard it was contentious in terms of, the decision to strike, for sure. So obviously just kind of continue to monitor things there, as we get ever so close to, that deadline there, March 10th on that one. And then next, I want to jump into the, of course, my Los Angeles Lakers and our drama and woes that obviously coming out of All-Star break has been interesting. Obviously, the reports, obviously, that come out of DeAndre Ayton, comparing himself to Clint Capella, and feeling that's who the Lakers are, seeing him as, in that sense, has been interested. And I think just, obviously the struggle is on the court. I want to say we dropped our last two or three, because obviously lost the game to the Celtics, Magic, and Suns. Obviously the Magic and Suns game were close, uh, close losses that we ended up, not coming out, on the on the right side of those games. Yeah, just lost our last 3 out of 4 games. Coming out of All-Star break. Has been tough to see. Has been tough to see for my Lakers. And obviously, hopefully, we turn it around. I still feel, we're a sleeper team, out west. And obviously the best team out west as well. But I think, the issues that, been buzzing not only obviously with the DeAndre Ayton locker room contention, but also I think this belief that LeBron, AR, and Luca aren't able to, play well together. And I think that's I don't believe that in the sense of obviously offensively, they're a juggernaut in that sense. Obviously, our biggest downfall is our, inability to play defense and, stop and get, the necessary stop to, continuously, win games to the level we're capable of. And I feel like, our offense is incredible. I think it's just figuring out, excuse me, it's just figuring out how we, continue to, get back in, get back in that motion of playing, playing team defense and trying to get back on the right side of the standings. Cause I think as of right now, we're behind the Timberwolves and in the West. I think we fell out in that sense, within the standings. So we are currently, as mentioned, currently 6 seed out west, and I think obviously want to avoid that playing tournament for sure. We definitely want to avoid that and get back into that top 4 and obviously ultimately hopefully top 3 within the West. It's obviously gonna be a tough battle. I think we'll ultimately be able to figure it out and get things back on track. And then just quick note back to that DeAndre and Clint Capella thing. Obviously, Aiton, I get his frustrations, not feeling like he's being seen, as a key or true piece. But I'm gonna be honest, you're on a team with LeBron, Luca, AR. You do obviously, and he had, we felt, positive, coming into the season that he understood his role. But I think obviously as the season has continued to wane on, that he's obviously felt frustrated in that sense in terms of his exact role. But I mean, you knew what it was. You were ultimately the 4th option on this team, 4th scoring option, and just doing your necessary part. And I think if we did obviously have like if he played like a prime Clint Capella and how he read himself, is we would be appreciative of that because Clint Capella did his job and did his role. Clint got rebounds, Clint, got the necessary blocks on defense, and Clint was a lob threat every time down with Harden, Chris Paul, and obviously throughout all his stops, he played his necessary role across all his stops in the league. But I think not only that slight to Clint, but I think just not really understanding whoever is obviously, already struggling, as a team. But I think just further trying to, contention and, disdain, in the locker room has been interesting, and I get the purpose of it, but obviously he's frustrated in his role. And I, completely get that. But I think just, hopefully we, figure out the locker room issues and, this belief of LeBron and Luca, not getting along. Obviously, the video that came out about them and, how they, exited the locker room and things of that nature. I'm just like, all right, guys, this narrative has, got to be stopped. In that sense, I think just getting back to, our winning basketball certainly is going to help that and certainly avoid further drama because, it's always drama in Lakerland, but I think we would rather, have the positive, positive drama that's, that's supported with winning versus, obviously negativity, continue to, fall in the slump in that sense. So hopefully, my Lakers bounce back, and I feel like we will as this, second half of the season continues because it's only going to get harder as we get closer, towards the end of the season and towards the playoffs as well. So ultimately, feel like we'll figure it out. But yeah, it should be fun and continue. Obviously, I'll continue to keep tabs on that piece right there. And then I want to jump in, of course, top four. Obviously, y'all know what my favorite album has been, and it's still been on repeat. It's Cold and the Fall Off. And honestly, after every listen, I continue to be more appreciative in terms of not only the story he's trying to tell, but also his messaging and obviously what he's trying to convey. And what ultimately not only as I said before, the love for his city, his craft, and his family, those three core themes we see throughout the album. But I think just in terms of what he's been able to tell throughout his whole discography, from the come up to now with the fall off has just been impeccable. Obviously, giving us, his his story and his tale of who he is and who he's ultimately become. And I think that's been the dopest part. Um, being a listener and being a part of the journey. And as I said, the fall off just further propels that, and it's been incredible body of work. As I said, it's been nonstop in my rotation, and it's just been fun to listen to. And love it. And obviously, Cole dropped the world tour. Excited. Still figuring out what stops I'm a hit on the tour. Obviously, as a few extra things, and like I got to work out and figure out, but it's ultimately when those things come to light, obviously we'll be in the building for sure for this cold tour. At any of the stops, so excited. Just in general, for the music. Yeah, I just been listening to Cole and only Cole. Like literally, it's been on just nonstop repeat since it dropped, and I haven't listened to anything else. But yeah, the fall off. It's just been incredible. From you know this 29, to this 39. As I said, I think last time I felt like this 39 now. Obviously, I do love. And I feel like I'm definitely gonna appreciate it, kind of more later on. Like I said, this 29, boom, banger. Is that's my favorite side of the album thus far. And I feel like, as I said, that this 39 later on, as I continue to grow and continue to be more appreciative of things in life, and this journey. I think that side of that album is I'm gonna really truly love that side of the album, and be appreciative in that sense of the story you're trying to tell there. But as it's right now, obviously love both sides of the album. But I really do see that in that sense. But then favorite show I'm currently watching. I got put onto a great show by someone, and it's called The Hunting Party. So I've been watching that. Obviously, my shows are back in the sense of Paradise is back. That's been a great watch. What else have I been watching? FBI is back. The Neighborhood. What else have I been watching outside? But The Hunting Party, incredible. So it's essentially this story of the it's this, they created essentially this world for serial killers, and they essentially, well, they locked up all the serial killers, and you know, an explosion happened, and the serial killers all ended up getting, going out on the loose, some of them escaped and things of that nature. So obviously they're going back and hunting those serial killers that ended up, sir, getting back to roaming to, doing what they do. And I think it's just been interested, watching it. And it's been great. It's on Netflix, The Hunting Party. It's a great watch on that. But what else have I been watching? Just a lot of, my usuals, just find, something different to watch. I finished Younger. Younger was great. But yeah, just been, watching the shows I like and, just finding new shows, like I said, like The Hunting Party that, I can appreciate. In that sense, what do I currently have going on? Right now I've been figuring out my my bulking journey, my weight gain. That's been fun and figuring that out. And in in terms of being, as I said, that kind of that compassion with myself, that self acceptance of, just obviously doing the necessary things to, take care of myself, with, with my nutrition, uh, my exercise routine, obviously, shout out to, chosen one training in the sense of, going out there, going to the gym and putting, those necessary days in there, but also counteracting that, with the right nutrition, and how, I'm going about, bulking up and, trying to continue to, take care of myself in that sense. So I've been going, that's what's currently been going on. Well, I can't talk right now, but that's what's currently been going on in that sense of, how I've been going about that. What I'm looking forward to, as I said, got a few, couple of trips planned out. I was looking forward to, the Cole concert or actually figuring out what stop I'm gonna end up going for that. Like I said, just continue to, accept myself, continue to, accept compliments, and being appreciative of those and not feeling, undeserving of that. And just continue, grow and, shine in my light in my being and who I'm ultimately becoming. Because I also know who I want to be. So I think just continue to work to that and not rush through the process. In that sense. But yeah, um, you know, moving in that light as well, moving in my greatest strengths and knowing what I'm, capable of is, so much more than the limitations I probably put on myself, in the past. And I think just, looking forward to that and being gracious with myself for sure, in that sense too. Um, but as always, always appreciate y'all, listening to my rambles, and just tuning in. Um, so definitely, grateful for that, and until the next time as always, see y'all next time. But yeah, peace.